Well, hello, world. Welcome to The Q.
Hey.
Hey.
The podcast where each week we ask a random question meant to spark a lively conversation among friends. And I am joined today and hopefully most weeks by real friends, real life friends. They are not made up. Co-workers in the church, partners in crime. Daniel and Hannah. How weird would it be? I just had mannequin friends. That would be amazing.
We are real people.
Real people.
Real people.
All right. Well, today's random question I think is actually really appropriate because as we're attempting to get our podcast off the ground, which is actually going pretty well. So
Yeah.
for not really pushing it or promoting it. Somebody asked me, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? When are you going to push? And I'm like, man, I'm so shy with social media stuff. I don't know. But that's because everything you read, it says, you got to have social media. You got to have social media. You got to have social media.
Yep.
And which spurs the question for me today is social media evil? Is social media evil? Now, I was curious what the dictionary definition was of evil. I know what my definition is as a Christian, and it's Satan and certain football teams. But the dictionary definition is immoral, wicked, harmful, detrimental, those kind of things. Is social media evil in the sense that is it wrong? Is it immoral? Is it detrimental? So I was really curious to ask you guys this because one, what is, and I don't have a bunch of questions for you. I'm just curious. What is your history with social media? Like, when did you get started with social media? Because I can pinpoint mine back to when I actually began. So what about you guys?
Well, I remember it was shortly after high school because I was jealous that I didn't go to like a university or college. So I couldn't have Facebook, but all my college friends had Facebook. But then MySpace came out.
Oh, yeah.
And so
So what year was that?
So
What year
I
did you graduate?
graduated in 2002. So probably in like, I don't know, maybe like 04, 2003, 2004.
Okay.
So,
Really? How old
Yeah.
were you? 18?
I mean, I was 19.
Well, you graduated high school in 2003?
2002.
Or 2002. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I was a junior in college. You're such a baby. Okay, so you were like a early adopter. I don't even remember when MySpace came out. Maybe I remember people in college having MySpace. MySpace was around then, right?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Well, almost everybody had the MySpace
Did you?
thing. Yeah.
You're a musician.
I made one. Yeah. I made
Wasn't
a
that
music
for
one.
musicians?
Yeah.
I mean, primarily it was supposed to be a musician thing or something.
Yeah. I put some songs on there and stuff. And then, and then Facebook was just for college people or whatever at the time. But
Yeah.
I think a ton of people had MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a MySpace account. Was that the account or was it Facebook? Which one of those had the Tom guy? Like whenever you signed up, Tom became your friend.
That
or
was
something?
MySpace.
Yeah.
That was
I
MySpace?
forgot about
And they did
Tom.
all what was the Mafia Wars or whatever, that game? There was all that stuff that went around on MySpace. Did you ever play that?
Oh,
There was
I
some
remember
game.
some games. Yeah.
Did you know that MySpace still exists?
Yeah, I tried to log back into mine, but I don't remember what email it was. or
Really?
Well, I
anything.
think it's been sold multiple times. I
Okay.
think even Justin Timberlake owned it for a while.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's just never been able to get a footing in any way. And I remember a pastor one time, I think it was Andy Stanley, did a message one time on social media where he created a MySpace page during the sermon. And
Yeah.
I don't even know what it was about. It was kind of like how easy it is to create something that isn't real.
Yeah.
So in a
Yeah.
way, I think he was kind of prophesying,
Yeah.
not to sound all Christianese, but he was kind of prophesying what was to come.
Yeah.
How easy it would be to create something that you're not
Yeah.
and draw people to that. Yeah, my first experience was probably not till 2008 or 2009. Taylor got on Facebook, and the only reason she got on Facebook was because of those button things. Do you guys remember the buttons at Facebook? Is that what they were called? They weren't called buttons, maybe. They were called something else. Whatever those, like waiters and stuff at some restaurants used to wear them.
Yeah.
And they have a word to them. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Like
but
Flare?
Flare. Thank
Flare.
you. Flare. You nailed
That's
it.
right.
Thank you. That was going to drive me crazy.
I don't
some
remember
movie
doing
I
any
saw.
of that on Facebook.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
so
they had it.
so somebody introduced her to Facebook. We were living in Wisconsin at the time, and I remember her like every single night. She was just researching flare buttons, and then you had like a cork board, and you would put all these flare on the cork board, and they had all these cute little sayings or whatever, and then you collect them, and then you'd have some friends, and then your friends were like sharing their flare
Huh.
and like passing them back and forth, and that for a long time that was like the most basic thing about Facebook was just sharing flare.
Huh.
It was like the most popular thing.
Huh.
And
I must have got on Facebook after Flare.
yeah, well, I mean, it didn't last but more than a year or two, and then it started turning into more of that social connection.
Yeah.
Starting not just connecting with people in the dorms across campus, but now you
Yeah.
can connect with your family across the country. And so in the beginning, when she was doing that, I thought this is the stupidest thing in the world. Like, why are you wasting your time with this? But then when it became more of a social component, and I saw that she was connecting with high school friends and stuff, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I mean, maybe I'll give that a whirl. And so so I got on around 2008, 2009, and had not ever disconnected until my sabbatical in June. Was the first time I'd ever like deactivated or anything like that. So,
Wow.
but have wanted to for years for multiple reasons. But Daniel, when I met you and before we even hired you at the church, you were like no social media.
Yeah.
So you had MySpace. So how did you go from embracing it? Like, what changed for you to suddenly say, I want nothing to do with this?
Well, MySpace for me wasn't about connecting with anybody at all. It was just like they were doing it, so it was kind of like just a hobby thing or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna put this cool thing with a bunch of microphones and guitar strings or whatever. And so decorated the page and put a few songs that I wrote or something that were on there, and so people could listen to it. And so I don't know, I just got busy and just quit checking it, or I wasn't ever on there anyway. So I just stopped doing MySpace at all. And then Darcy got on Facebook pretty early on. She was on it when we were dating, so it was maybe 2006. I guess we got married in 07. But so yeah, she was on there, and that's what I thought. Same thing about that. I was like, why are you wasting your time on this? And da da da. And so, but it was, she connected with people, and then all the different reasons that everybody has Facebook now, to plan parties or to catch up with people or whatever it is, and things like that. But I don't know. I just never had the time to do it, or just never had an interest in doing it. It was more like, I don't know. I was just.
But when I
busy-
met you,
busy
you were
doing other
just like,
stuff.
nope, don't want
Yeah.
it. Want
And I
nothing to
didn't.
do with it.
Nope, I just never
At
did
all.
want to do it, and I always kind of felt like that. I was like, well, it's just kind of showy or doing this, or there's a lot of reasons we can get into, I'm sure, but there was just enough reasons that I didn't want to do it. So the only reason I got it when I started at the church, or maybe 2018, I think is when that was, 19, was because then I thought, well, it'll help me get to know people more, and with names and things like that. And so yeah, that's when I first got on there, and now I'm
Yeah.
kind of back to where it's just kind of it's deactivated, or it's on there, whatever, so I can still use my messenger. But so I haven't been on on Facebook now for maybe 8 months, 6 months, 8 months. So it's been quite a while that I've been back kind of off of it now.
I
So.
went gung ho for a lot of years, trying to use it as a medium to grow your reach and grow. And I remember when we were still part of Lamont Wesleyan before we planted the church we're at now. I remember actually taking time, like we took time to go through a social media seminar and how to reach, how to get engaged, how to do all that stuff, and connect with people. I really started second guessing the use of social media when I watched a couple of years ago The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And I was already really struggling with social media. First of all, I guess I just want to say from the very beginning, to answer the basic question, is social media evil? And I the only honest answer I can give to somebody is maybe. It's one of those things where it always depends on just how you choose to use it and how you allow it to control you. How much do you allow it to own your life?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
and I never really had thought about how much it owns us until I had watched the Social Dilemma documentary that was on Netflix. It's still on Netflix. I actually just rewatched it last night for our time together today. And I did write down a bunch of different notes that I was going to bring up for us in our conversation, just to kind of spark some thoughts from you guys on
Yeah.
on this topic, because I think for the most part, and you can disagree with me, but I think for the most part right now, social media is more evil than it is good.
I would
And-
agree.
Okay. So you agree, just top of your head, why do you agree? I'm just curious.
Why is it evil? Like, I think people so much, they just put everything out there and it just consumes. And then people like, you got to have the likes and the comments, and people worry about too much about what other people think. So I think that's one reason it's evil.
All right. Yeah. Dana, what about you?
Yeah, I think like if somebody would just ask me if I think it's evil or not, I would say it's evil in the same way that alcohol is evil. Like if you're responsible, whatever, people, it's not an issue for some people. Some people, it completely destroys their lives, their family lives. So it's like, it's like how you use it or what the motivation is behind it. But I think it's more evil because it's so like widely accepted as just the norm, and it's so monetized and all the ads and all the different things that that is just constantly shoved at you. So nobody else puts anything in front of them, or nobody else lets anything else have this much effect over your life as we do social media.
Right, yeah,
our
it's a
cell
very
phones in
controlling
general.
thing in our life. And you know what's so funny about that is when social media began, it was like something we kind of made fun of, and we made fun of people for using it, because
Yeah.
we'd always be like, "Why you got to post about going to the bathroom?"
Yeah.
Like, I went to the bathroom today. Here's a plate of my food that I ate.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
And
we
that's
have
what-
all done. We've all posted those. Well, I don't
I
know
never
about
posted about going to
I
the
don't.
bathroom.
Yeah, that was going to say I haven't posted about going to the bathroom, but I have posted food, especially when it's really pretty.
Yes, when it looks good. Well, and that's what I did, because Darcy had it, like I said before, I did, and so I'm like, I don't know why you do this, or I disagree or whatever. I didn't give her a hard time for for years or whatever, but then when I got it for because then I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this for work or whatever. Well, then I just got sucked right in too. So then it was funny because I had this perspective of like it's a waste of time or it's all these other negative things. Then I started using it and got pulled right in, and then I watched that Social Dilemma as well. And I think I think probably, if everybody's really honest, probably everybody's convicted about, even if you're not a Christian, you're concerned that you're on your phone too much, or that you're too braggy, or maybe that you're too dramatic on Facebook or whatever. There's all this other stuff that's linked to it. And so I started realizing that, watch that Social Dilemma, and that's what I like about the Social Dilemma, because we could just say, I'm not just going to say Facebook or social media. It really is. The issue is that the phone is the bigger issue. That it's like we wouldn't have the Social Dilemma, we wouldn't have the social media problem if we didn't have the phone problem already. So that kind of it brings up a whole nother aspect of it. But so then I'm like, all right, it wasn't worth it. And I had to ask myself, is it worth what I gain in ministry, or as far as my job goes, connecting with people and stuff, for the temptation or the constant, pull to buy something else, or all the different issues that come with social media? Is it worth the good that it's giving me? And it wasn't. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to not be on it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I've went back. So I've had a good perspective change a couple times on it. That
The only reason I've always had a really hard time letting go of it is the social component of it. As a pastor, I like to stay connected to people.
Sure.
And the reality is, people just don't invite you into their homes anymore. Like, the days of the pastor just randomly stopping by to knock on the door and say, "Hey, what you doing?" And people are like, "Sure, come on in." And that's long gone. I mean, if I randomly show up to people's houses today, they're going to be like, "What are you doing here?" And then they're going to freak out because they'll be like, "The house is dirty. I've got no makeup on." It's like, and then it's almost offensive. Like I'm even hesitant sometimes to even like call people on the phone, because we're not even a society that likes to make phone calls anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And hear each other's voice. It's like, man, just shoot me a text. But then now you've got text etiquette, and everybody's got to follow certain rules when it comes to conversations and text.
Yeah.
And then they had to create emojis, because now emojis are the way to help you communicate what you're saying, because anybody can read into what you're saying, and you don't want them to be able to interpret how you're saying something. So let's create the emojis.
Yeah.
Thank
And
goodness
so-
they came out with the face palm emoji.
The face palm.
which is all a result of not just talking in person. So it's
Yeah.
funny that any of the social media stuff that was supposed to help, you socialize is
Yeah.
doing the complete opposite.
Yeah.
That's where I was
That's
like,
a
it
good
really is very, very evil. I'm like, oh man.
That's a good point.
The
because,
more we talk
yeah,
about it, the more I'm like, oh, okay.
that's an absolutely good point because you're allowing social media, text messaging,
Yeah.
and all of these. All these forms of communication that are supposed to be meant to make our lives easier, we
Yeah.
are allowing them to actually make our lives more complicated,
Well,
and
disconnected,
and
Less-
shallow to
less,
some
yeah,
degree.
less joyful. Like
Yeah.
how many people would get up and put actual pants on and do your hair and makeup if you knew people were going to stop by every day? Like, so are we laying around in our PJs more often than we would before? I think we are. It's like,
Well, listen,
get up and get
listen.
yourself ready for the day. So somebody
Sweats
shows up.
Are God's gift to humanity.
Yeah. Which if you're
like-
fine with people seeing you in those, wear that.
Absolutely.
So it's like,
Absolutely.
come
We
on
had
by.
we do this thing a couple times a month called a family meal where we have church people that will come over to our house and anybody can come. And this last Monday, absolutely, I was in full-on sweats and a
Yeah.
hoodie, and I did not care.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think people are so used to it. Nobody said a thing to me about it. It's like, oh, why is he wearing sweats? You're not going to put jeans. Like, I hate wearing jeans. I want to be in sweats right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
love
mean, I'm not
sweats.
saying everybody should get dressed, but like usually it's more for the women if they're like, okay, well, I'm just wearing my sleep pants and I'm not together, I'm not ready for the day, and somebody shows
Yeah.
up, it's an issue. So then I'm like, well,
I think women always have that. Like
Yeah.
knowing that we are also videoing this, I was like, oh, I should probably put
Yeah.
on
yeah,
a nice outfit.
yeah,
And then when you get
And
home,
my
it's
new
like, I'm going to rip
shoes.
this bra off and throw sweats on, and I can breathe.
yeah. So it's like, how many times do we? A lot of people just stopped kind of preparing for the day because nobody's going to show up, nothing
Yeah.
like that's going to happen. So I'm like, well, that's probably a negative as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to beat this book to death because we talked about it in our last podcast, but this At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof, he doesn't cite the study, and I was too lazy to look in the back of it and where he's got the study from, but he looked at a couple of studies, and one study showed that the average user, so just the common person, touches their phone 2,617 times a day. It's
crazy.
2,617 times a day. We are touching our phones. Heavy users touch their phones around 5,427 times a day.
yeah,
Which is just crazy to me. And then I, out of curiosity, was looking at screen time. You guys don't have your screen times on, do you?
I do.
I want to know what your average
It goes off every
phone
Sunday
use
morning,
is.
and I'm like,
My screen
ugh.
time's not on, so mine says 0, so I'm awesome.
turn it on.
I'm really no, because I don't want to be embarrassed.
You gotta know.
I'm not going to say which kids were which or who was who in my home, but I looked at everybody's phones last night, and they were like a couple of them about 3.5 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
One of them was 7.5 hours a
Dang.
day, and we had a conversation about that.
Yes.
Well, I want to know what Daniel does before I say anything. Say mine.
Okay,
Mine is 1 hour and 19 minutes.
That does not surprise me.
What?
That does not surprise
All right,
me.
well, you know what? That just says you're a credible person to have an opinion in the negative side of things. You know,
Yeah.
like anti-social
Yes.
media.
Yeah, or anti-phone even.
Anti-phone,
I'll go,
absolutely.
I'll
You're
go,
so
I'll go right
outdoorsy.
past social
Yeah.
media.
Ugh.
I mean, like for those of you guys that don't know Daniel, and I think we need to do an episode where we just
Introduce
ourselves a little
Yeah.
bit. But for those of you who don't know Daniel, he is the most outdoorsy person. He's got one of those. He bought like one day on a whim, like I'm going to buy that school bus and I'm going to turn it into an RV. And he's working on that thing, the schoolies or whatever they call
Yeah.
them. So he's working on that. I am very like tech city. He's very
Yeah.
outdoorsy, live free hippie.
Yeah, yeah, tree hugger.
Tree.
Not a tree hugger.
So we we do love our trees, but I don't think I've ever actually. Yeah, I did hug one time. So Darcy did too, one of those giant redwoods. But it's like, and that's a part of it, being outdoors and raising a big family, and we live in the country, so I have a ton of stuff
Yeah.
to maintain.
And
I have
you
a
have,
bunch
like-
of vehicles to maintain. So
You have no internet service out there,
No.
barely.
Yeah,
like,
if
barely.
we had 100 gigs up and down in our house, it may have had an effect on where I'm at today. Because I'm like, I'm gonna try to Google this, and it's like 30 seconds later, I'm like, I give up. I'm just gonna go start. I'm gonna go do it.
whenever Daniel gets on the internet, it goes back to those like modem days
Yeah.
where it's like you hear that
Yeah,
dial, and that's his high speed.
yeah. That's when it's actually working.
Yeah, and Hannah, I think you're kind of more like me because you're more the city girl, and you like country music, which is dumb.
I wouldn't
but-
call myself city. I mean, I grew up country girl. There
How
was
big
this
was
thing.
it? How big was the town you grew up in?
Well, whenever I was there, I think it was like 5,000.
Like
Oh, yeah,
people,
that's pretty small.
When I was there, like people left.
Well, it's grown,
grown.
so much
Oh,
now.
how big is it now?
I think it's almost like 10.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up in a city of 50,000 people. So
Yeah, no.
anyways,
Do you want to know my screen time? We don't
Oh
have
yeah,
to.
yeah. Okay, so Daniel was an hour and something. My family is crazy. My family's probably more normal like everybody else. Your average use screen time is what, Hannah?
4 hours and 10 minutes.
4 hours and 10
That's
minutes.
crazy to me. Like,
Yeah.
is it like
It'll
even
tell you on there too. I think it tells you like what are you using the most?
email?
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say email. We're not gonna check that. I don't know. I don't know where.
If it says what different apps, what percentage of it is
Yeah.
what's being used.
4 hours and 41 minutes of it is text messaging.
Oh wow, that's a lot of texting.
I have a lot of people I
Holy
communicate with.
That's true. That is
Oh
true.
my gosh. All right, so
People text me all the time.
I do want to talk about this Social Dilemma documentary, and like I said, man, if you haven't seen it, it's amazing,
It is
and
good.
It is
it
good.
will absolutely make you question if you should be on social media or just your social media use or how you use it, or all those types of things. And I think it's good. And the reason I think the documentary is so powerful is because everybody they're interviewing is somebody who was part of the system.
Yeah, that helped create it all.
Yeah, these are people who created the problem. And now they have left it, and now they're trying to expose what they've created, which I commend them for. But these are former Facebook executives, Twitter executives, Pinterest CEO. I mean, these are high up engineers, and one of them was Facebook's. He was the head of Facebook's growth division.
To monetize it.
Yeah, and how to get more money, how to get in people's minds. And so it's awesome from that perspective, man. You get to see the truth actually come out. Something I think we all kind of know, but we choose to ignore in a lot of ways. And what they talk about in there is that, that social media has created this massive link between mental health and social media use. That now the two are so intertwined. And in the unhealthy ways that we can discuss, but also the ways that they know, like they have figured out ways to manipulate the human psychology to get you to become addicted to this thing so that you are touching your phone 2,617 times a day.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes in there, and I'm just going to bring out some stuff here, so hopefully this isn't too boring for y'all, but I'm going to bring out some stuff here that I just wrote down from watching it again last night. And here's one quote. It said, "If you aren't paying for the product, then you are the product."
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the whole point, that we aren't users, we are what are being sold.
Yeah.
And that's what these executives are saying. You are the product. Advertisers are the clients. And their success comes whenever they can change what we do and change how we act and change what we think about and change what we buy.
Makes you feel kind of dirty.
Absolutely. You are a product being sold.
Yes.
And when I first heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, that is absolutely right. I've never even thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
You're the product.
But how powerful is the thought to be like, oh no, it's just, or whatever, or just to completely ignore it and go right back to doing it, right back to using it.
Yeah.
Which is the sad part, that it's like, how many people probably even feel that or know, like we said already, that, and then they're just like, well, everybody else is doing it. So it's a scary place we're in.
Yeah. And one Twitter former executive, he said flat out, everything is being tracked.
Yep.
What you look at, when you're happy, we know when you're happy, we know when you're depressed, we know when you're lonely, we know when you're looking at your ex's photos, we know if you're an introvert or an extrovert. And he said all this data is being fed into systems designed to predict our actions.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you do, kind of creates that predictive model. And then through those algorithms, then they know exactly what they need to put in front of you that keeps you looking at your devices.
Yeah.
And that's super scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. But we allow it to
Crazy.
happen.
We do. Well, and it's funny that it's and I keep saying this too. It's like there's no app, there's no product that's being, put out there or whatever that's actually going to help your life. That was their motivation, was to, this is going to help you, Hannah, and I'm concerned about your well-being and your family and, your mental health, so I'm going to offer you this product and it's going to help you. It's like, no, it's to make money. All of it's to make money. And we accepted it all as like this thing that's going to make us feel better and kind of a part of our life that is supposed to help us. When meanwhile, behind the scenes and underneath all these layers, there's all this stuff that's going on
Well, that's
that
the-
we're just completely
yeah.
unaware of or choose to be unaware of.
That's the deception of it a little bit, I think, where it's like, hey, use this tool. It's free, air quotes.
Yeah.
It's free. Now use this tool you can connect with your friends, you can connect with exes. And then they've got all these stories where like, this
Yeah,
guy who loved this girl in high school and then they went their separate ways and then they met
They
50 years
reconnected.
later on social media. And now
Yeah.
they've rekindled the love of their lives. See
Yeah.
how good of a tool this can be. And that is something good about social media.
Yeah.
It has let me stay in touch with like high school friends,
Yeah.
college friends, people that, you would have just lost touch with.
Yeah.
That is one good thing about it. And I like that I can keep track of cousins and, because
For family.
life is busy and we don't see each other as much, but it's nice to see them, see what they're doing or
Or
stuff
see what
like
they see what they want you to think that they're doing.
Yeah, but at the same time, couldn't you make the argument that it's also caused your relationships
is.
to become incredibly shallow?
I was going to say that, or that you don't do a family reunion and see everybody. That we
Well-
don't pick up the phone and
Yeah.
call them, and so we, it's like, I don't know. I think it's
Yeah. I keep in touch with, talk to one of my cousins. I would say at least monthly.
Yeah.
But some of my.
Okay.
yeah. Well, and
So-
that brings up later. I won't dive into it too,
Yeah.
but that in the At Your Best book, it brings that up that it's like, what we say that's a positive to be able to stay in touch with people from high school, but if you're honest, are you doing the best you can as a husband, as a father? I'm not. Like, I know I can always be doing better. So should I be concerned about people from high school that we would have naturally went our own separate ways and lived our own lives? So it's like that's one of the positives of social media. Oh, you can stay connected with all these people. Well, how many people can you really stay connected with and still do what you really need to do, that you prioritize?
Yeah.
Your family or your career, whatever it is, that how many people can you really
Yeah.
stay in contact
Yeah.
with and do that well? Not very many.
Well,
Yeah.
and I wanted to bring that out too, because again, he brings that up.
Yeah.
And where I won't get a deep dive here, but he gets into another study looking at where it was like, how many friends can you actually have? And this one he does quote, but I won't get into the boring part of this. Everybody is wired to have maybe 5 really close friends.
Yeah.
Take a bullet for ride or die people.
Yeah.
And then everybody can have around 15 deeper friendships, with people. Not like your closest BFFs, but they're friends, they're close to you, they're invited to your birthday parties.
Yeah.
Those types of things, have about 15. And then everybody has the capacity for about 150 personal relationships. People that they can know, people that they see him at church, when they see him at a ball game, in the mall, whatever. Those are people that they'll be like, hey, what's up? Like they
Acquaintances, more or less, but
they're in their life,
Yeah.
So it'd be like when you go to church,
Yeah.
as an example, if you've got 200 people there, there's probably 20 or 30 people that are the ones you would say I'm close to. And
Yeah.
these other
Yeah.
170, I know them,
Yeah.
but they're not really part of they're not my 5, they're not my 15.
Yeah.
They might be my 150, but some of them are so new, they're not even part of my 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he talks about the idea that sometimes when somebody becomes they enter into your 5,
Mm-hmm.
then somebody ends up ultimately getting kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
Because a human being can only handle so much. So it might just be we end up losing touch, somebody moves away, and that somebody who was your 5 is now part of your 15 or your 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that becomes your friend on Facebook that you still keep in touch with, but we're just not that very close. And I bet all of us could name people that were
Oh,
in our
yeah.
5
Yeah.
and now are in our 150, or maybe not at all. And
Yeah.
I goes back to high school, where some of the guys who were part of who were in my 5 in high school,
Yeah.
and were even groomsmen in my wedding,
Yeah.
are now not even in my 150 because I
Yeah.
don't even talk to them. I see kind of what's going on with them online, and that's about it. But we don't talk anymore.
Yeah.
So do you agree with that study?
I agree with it. Yeah. I know I've got my your circle
Yeah.
or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Inner circle.
My inner
Yeah.
circle, my outer
Oh
circle.
yeah. So he's got this like bullseye
So-
thing. So it's like your 3 to 5 is your best friends, your 12 to 15 are friends, your 150 is your tribe, and then everybody else is on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point that he is trying to make in the book is that, you know, when you look at something like social media and we get so wrapped up in how many followers do you have and how many friends on Facebook do you have? And oh, that person only has 130 friends. And that person's got 2,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't know all 2,000 of those people.
No.
And Facebook doesn't even let you see what's going on in all their lives.
Right.
Yeah, and all those people's thumbs up or hearts or likes or comments shouldn't have an effect on you either.
Right.
That's another big issue. That it's like,
I went through actually my Facebook yesterday because I didn't know like how many friends I had on Facebook, so I was curious. It was like 700 and some, and I was like,
yeah,
700? How do
Mm-hmm.
I even know 700 people?
And if Facebook, which I don't know why they don't do this, I wish they would let you like customize your news feed to where you could say, okay, I know I've got 700 friends. Maybe some of these people want to connect with me. And there's another goes back to like the text messaging etiquette where it's like, I can't unfriend somebody because I might personally offend them if I
Yeah.
unfriend them. And that's become like a psychological thing
It
to even
is.
unfriend
But
somebody.
you can unfollow them, and then you don't
Well, that's
see
what
any of their
everybody does.
stuff.
Like, well, I'll just unfollow them so I don't know them. Like, dude, if they are not in your life
yeah,
Yeah.
and you do not interact with them in any way, shape, or form, you are not that interested in what's going on in their life, then feel
Yeah.
free and fly, bird, and unfriend the thing. Like,
yeah. But
who
Facebook doesn't want you to
cares?
do that because that goes back to the algorithm and the sales and that they're getting you to interact. So they want all 700 of your friends to stay on there because they will
Right.
see products that you're buying or things. So that's how the whole thing is
Right.
designed.
Design.
So they don't want you
Right.
getting people off of there. They want as many. You want as many friends.
You
That's where the
used
whole idea
to-
came from.
Well,
You
and that,
used to
and
be
that
able
will
to-
go towards the end where I do want to give some ideas, and
Yeah.
you guys could give me feedback on ideas on how to keep it under control. Because this podcast is not meant to tell you to get rid of Facebook or social media unless something that's absolutely detrimental to your life. Then
Yeah.
cut it out. I mean, you don't. If you're a drug addict, I wouldn't tell you. Well, just cut back to 1 needle a week in your arm. I
Yeah.
would say no. You have to cut it out of your life. You don't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't kind of keep the addiction going.
No.
And so if it's to that detriment where you're looking at your phone over 5,000 times a day, then you've got a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they say none of these services are free. They cost us way more than we possibly realize.
Yeah.
And I was jotting down what they cost. Time is one of them, and we talked about budgeting our time last week.
Yes.
And how, you can always make more money. You can always buy more things, but you cannot gain more time.
No.
No.
And so when you are wasting time on something that is worthless,
Yes.
that doesn't really benefit you in any way, then that could have been used for something way more beneficial and uplifting
Yep.
and productive. Of course, some people have made a living out of social media, and that is their time. That's what they do for a living.
Just weird to me.
Well, it shows how much money is being
Yeah.
made and all that stuff
Well,
too.
true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is it healthy? It's like, are they sacrificing a personal life or relationships or family or all of that? I mean, if
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, we'll get into this in a minute, but yeah, people who make their lives on things like YouTube and that kind of stuff, it's like they'll do it for years, and I think part of the problem is they feel like they have to keep this persona that draws people back to
Yeah.
them, and then you end up being this really fake person
Yeah.
for year after year after year. It's why when we did this podcast, I was like, I'm not going to do a fake persona. I just want to be us and just have a conversation as friends.
He didn't
Because I'm
tell
like-
me I couldn't ever grow my beard or anything ever again. Like, you have to look the same way.
You have to look the same way, all this stuff. Can't ride your heart.
Can't dye your hair pink, can I?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, can't have a pink mic cover while you wear red shoes. Ugh.
I have a pink and red sweater on. It matches.
So, anyways, lost where I was going. What was I saying?
I don't know. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Um,
thought it
these,
was
oh,
really
I was
important.
gonna say it is kind of a
Persona.
cool thing because it shows the innovation of people. That you could take anything and make a living doing it. And so I don't knock people who make a living doing it
Yeah.
or anything. That doesn't mean you're also. Oh, I remember I was gonna say you're also not hurting yourself in those things because when you're basically you are trying to make a living doing what Facebook is doing to you.
Yeah.
You're trying to make a living making people your product.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're trying to sell them.
Yep.
Because the more followers you get, the more likes you get on your videos or whatever on your post, the more sponsorship deals you can get. all that kind of stuff. And so you're using people in the same way, and then you
Yeah.
have to create a persona that probably really isn't you, because nobody is really excited 24 hours a day. And then inevitably you will run across videos or like, "Oh, I never thought I'd be
They
making a
finally
video like this.
Well, we all knew you were gonna.
I never thought this would be me."
Yeah.
You know, and they're depressed, and
Yes,
they're like, I got to
miserable.
take a break, and I
Yeah.
got to get out, and can't do this. Like, yeah, because you haven't been you for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've been selling yourself,
Yeah.
you know, in some way. And so there's just a lot of danger in it. So time, money, relationships. This is the big one for me because I'm a big relationship guy. That I think social media, and I know we pick on Facebook, but it's just the most used one,
Yeah.
not amongst the younger generation. I mean, Snapchat is
Yeah.
probably more popular, Snapchat, Instagram. But they're all still based around the idea of relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have created now a generation that doesn't even know how to have a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, our relationship is totally online. In fact, there's let's see here. Where in the documentary it talks about how this has had an effect on the current generation. And I mean, you saw this, but I know you've probably forgot it if it's been a while since you watched the documentary. Of course, we know what happens. Social media releases dopamine, a chemical in your brain, which feeds that reward and feel good pathway. So it's very
Right.
much like if you take cocaine, if you take marijuana, if you drink a lot of alcohol, whatever. All of that is doing the same thing. It is releasing dopamine into the brain. It is giving you a feel good sensation. And so the more you use, the more you need, because
Yeah.
your body adapts to it just like it does a drug.
Yeah.
And soon we're giving up families, we're giving up friends, we're giving up life around us because all we can do is look at that phone 2,617 times a day and feed that addiction.
Yeah.
We put them right next to our beds at night. We wake up with them. It's the first thing that we do. I remember one guy even said, well, here's the thing. Do you look at it before you pee, or you look at it while you pee? Because that's pretty much the two things you're going to do. You're going to look at it before you pee or while you pee. And so they talked about how self-worth and identity become incredibly wrapped up in those likes, in those followers, in that comment, in those feedbacks, to where it just owns you. You
Yeah.
become a slave to it, which is the design, because they don't
Yep.
make money if they don't have eyeballs.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the problem is, it's not wrong to seek the approval of people. That was kind of the idea. In the sense of, if you live in a tribe of 150 people, it's not wrong to be a good person within that tribe,
Yeah.
and to be well thought of and to have good reputation. But what the documentary says is, we were never designed to receive approval from thousands of strangers.
Yeah.
And people who hide behind their keyboards.
Yeah.
And so since 2010, this was fascinating to me. Since 2010, the number of girls per 100,000 who are admitted to the hospital for non-fatal self-harm, this is like cutting and stuff,
Yeah.
since 2010, which was really the jumping off point of social media. That's really when Facebook in particular took off.
Yeah.
That is up 62%.
Wow.
Between 15 and 19-year-olds. And the suicide rates for 15 and 19-year-olds since 2010 has risen 70%.
Wow.
Now listen to this. This will really
Heartbreaking.
blow you away. This will
Yeah.
really blow you away. Now, same thing. Girls per 100,000 who are admitted to the hospital for non-fatal self-harm, who are 10 years old to 14 years old, that has gone up 189%.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's insane.
And suicides amongst kids that same age has gone up 152%. Wow. 10 to 14-year-olds. And that sharp increase began in 2009 and 2010 when the iPhone had come out, which was a computer in your pocket,
Yeah.
and Facebook really took off.
Gosh. Ugh.
Yeah, and we've had that discussion, and as a staff and as a ministry, like, we can all say, oh, we're going to make all these changes and we're going to do all this stuff for our kids, but it's like, the reality is it started with us. Like, we're the ones that were doing it. We had kids and we gave it to our kids. So it's like, if we're not willing to change, if we're not willing to do something different, we're never going to see those numbers go back down. It's because
Yeah.
it's impossible.
No, you have to make change.
You have to do it yourself and say, so anybody that immediately goes to, well, let's look at more mental health for these kids, or let's look at all these ways we can change. Like, nope. It's like, we're the issue. It's not them.
Well, that's just it, because at the end of the day, all of these things are tools.
Yeah.
And they can be a powerful tool but it takes a grassroots effort to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can legislate it to death if you want. You could try to overregulate these companies and privacy and all that kind of stuff. And maybe some would work. But until we as a collective humanity decide to make some changes here, I think, what's that saying? You can't put it back in the box or whatever.
Yeah.
What is that saying? You can't put the rabbit back in the box. I'm going to make one up.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You can't. You can't put the
put the
tennis
cat
ball
back in
back in the tube.
The launcher. Potato back in the potato gun. Like it's
Yeah,
gone.
I don't know.
And it blow up in like 40,000 pieces.
I don't know. Yeah, so you have a generation of kids now who were born around that time who are now teenagers, and studies are showing that today's kids are more anxious, more depressed. They are less risk takers. They go on fewer dates. They get their driver's license way later.
Yeah.
So many of these things you need kids to experience and do, they're not doing.
Yeah.
To go outside and play, to learn how to communicate, build
Yeah.
relationships, solve problems, handle adversity, all these types of things, it just be a productive, interactive human in society that is able to stand up against the crap you're going to face in life. We're
Yeah.
creating a generation who can't do that
Yeah.
Yeah.
because all they're doing is looking at their phones all day, and all they're feeding themselves with are people who build them up and encourage them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I hate how no one plays outside anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Even like I try till I'm like, go outside.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe being a single kid. An only child, single kid.
Yeah.
That sounds like he's dating or something.
Yeah. Unmarried child.
An
you're-
unmarried only child.
Yeah.
Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's really the problem is your son who's in what, second grade or something?
Second grade.
Second grade, he's not married yet. That's his problem.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah.
That kid needs some adversity.
Well, it's funny. I keep going back to that too. I'm like, could you, because it's the same. It's a tool. Even our phones, it could be a tool or whatever. Like, I'm trying to think of a really good example right off the top of my head. It's like some people would argue that, they did all these studies back in the 70s or whenever it was on LSD and stuff like that. Like, well, that could be used for a tool to do this or to do that with, or, that's a pretty extreme example, but it's like, that you could bring up that argument with marijuana and, health benefits and things like that. There's such a huge divide on that some people are just like, no, because it opens the door to all these drugs and all this other stuff. So that's where I'm like, I'd be fine if we went as drastic as to say, let's write laws about social media and say it's illegal to even do it. It's like, it's basically how much of our economy is now based on it. Even if everybody knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that your own kid was going to die in 3 years because they're on social media, politicians, all this stuff, nobody could change it. Nobody would do anything about it because all of a society is ran off of that now. It's like, that's the scary part of it. Like, I think even a big group of people, radical people, could say, we're getting rid of our cell phones, period, because it's going to be a temptation to do all this other stuff. I'm going to go back to a landline. It's like small group of people that could change. In the next generation, there'll be a small group of kids that would understand and see life has nothing to do with what's on that cell phone, period. Like, it's a tool. It could be used for this or that. But how many people can do it and not just get addicted to it? How many people can have the phone and have the 100 kids at school say, oh, what's your Instagram or what's your thing, blah, 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 I want to friend you on there, and not do it. They're not going to be able to not do it. So it's like we have to make this drastic change to make any kind of real effect or any real change. But we know society as a whole or politicians or whatever are not going to make that change because there's billions of dollars in it now.
Billions.
Oh,
yeah.
no. I mean, these guys are paying politicians billions of dollars to not make any of these kind of changes because they don't make money.
Yeah. They'll just watch those numbers rise, suicides rise, whatever. And
Well, it used to be you had to, I know people would put the wrong birth date in there, but I don't know if it was Facebook, but you had to be like 16 before you could have
You
one.
can make it up. You don't
Yeah.
like.
I know.
I know there's kids around here that are on Facebook that just put the right age in.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so-and-so celebrating their 28th birthday. And they're like 13 years old,
Well, the scary part is they don't have to have Facebook because you have it. They'll watch you do it. So that's another scary part of it. It's like you can't say, well, this is bad for you, so you can't do it till you're 16. And meanwhile, I sit here and do
then
it
you
all
do
day
it.
long.
Yeah.
And our
True.
kids not see that and not be like, yeah, I'm definitely getting it either illegal or not illegal, whatever. But I'm going to do it before I'm supposed to of age And I'm definitely going to do it when I'm of age. It's like, so that's the problem. It's
Well, I just redeactivated my Facebook, and I've wrestled with that for a while. I didn't have it at all for my 60 days of sabbatical in the summer, and I did not miss it. And there's a part of me that does feel disconnected because people don't naturally just call the pastor anymore to tell you what's going on in their life. People don't just naturally invite you over anymore. And again, I think social media has kind of created that monster where we don't really have a real need to be that intimately involved with people, because if I see your vacation photos or people will put prayer requests on there or just whatever's going on in their life, if I like it, if I love it, if I put a little comment there, then that is modern day pastoral care. That is modern day friending. You know, and that's social activism too. Like there's just very empty activism that happens now where, you know, people are like, oh, these children are dying in this country. And if you just put, oh, that's so sad, I'll pray for them. Well, now you've just done your job. You don't need to go over there. You don't need to write letters to Congress.
Give money or something.
Yeah, you can give a little bit of money and you're done. Like you don't actually have to get involved in anything that truly matters. You can just do your social justice activist or whatever. Now, one of the things too that I thought was really interesting, and this is a conversation we could talk about forever. We're gonna hit an hour here pretty quick. One of the things I thought was interesting is these algorithms does include propaganda to a certain degree. Whether you hate it or like President Trump doesn't really matter. But the term fake news was not a bad term. I mean, it is a literal thing, because one of the Twitter executives on there, Twitter or Facebook, can't remember which one, he talked about how we feed you news. Or no, it was a Google exec. He said we would feed you news feeds based on where you live. So if you're in rural America and you're like, climate change is, then a lot of the natural things that would come up, if you're in like rural America, which tends not to be as big on like something like climate change, just as an arbitrary example. It would be like, climate change is bad, climate change is fake, climate change is this. Whereas if you live in what would be considered like urban cities and stuff, people tend to be more democratic or activist. It would be like, climate change is imminent, the world's being destroyed. You know, like they're feeding you things that just continue to feed a narrative for you based on where you live. And then it ends up putting everybody on any topic. It puts us in these bubbles to where we're only reading what fits what we believe, and we don't read any other objective views or opinions.
That's why I don't read the news.
Right. Well, I think you should, though, to some degree.
I mean, I read a little bit, but not very much. So I don't know what's true and what's not.
Yeah. And I found this really interesting. We don't really have time to get into it, but I found this really interesting. This is a quote. If we don't have a shared understanding of truth and what is real, if everyone gets to have our own set of facts, we cannot survive as a country. And that's, to me, exactly where we've gone. You have your set of facts. I have my truth. You have your truth. And now we're debating things like, are there more than two genders? And all these different things where we all agreed at some point on what was true, what was reality. We shared a basic reality, and now everyone has their own basic reality, and now we see society falling into chaos. And you cannot survive that way. We're, you know, and they even said in that we're gonna end up destroying ourselves in the next 20 years. We're not gonna need China to do it. We're not gonna need Russia to do it. We're probably gonna do it to ourselves. Because we just refuse to share a common reality and a common set of facts and a common idea of what is truth. And where does truth come from? And, you know, for us as Christians, truth always comes from the Word of God. You know, our foundation for what is true, what is moral, what is right, what is good is always based off what He says is true. But not everyone believes in religion, but all of us have some innate sense of what is true and real from a biological standpoint, from a moral standpoint. We all have innate things that we say are true. But then when you are allowing yourself to be put in this bubble where you will only read or pay attention to people who think like you, and then anyone who comes at you with a differing view, nope, don't even want to listen to you. Get out of my life. Can't friend you. Can't be part of our family anymore. I got to cancel you. You know, all these types of things. You gave money to that person. Nope, for campaigns. Oh, you're out. You don't get your job. Like, that's what we're becoming. It's crazy.
To bring up that piece of it, you know, like even, you know, obviously in my faith and in the Word of God, our whole existence was to serve God and to serve each other. So our society is obviously the way it is now is completely opposite of that. So now we've got everybody out for themselves, everybody to make money, to build your own life. So it's the complete opposite. It's
Right.
like instead of us providing for each other and serving each other, we're all serving our own desires and ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's obvious that this is the end all goal. So all of the stuff that drives social media and all the things like that we've been talking about for an hour all comes from somebody just trying to make money, not to help you, not to help each other, just to
No.
serve themselves.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering, my lab escaped and is
He's
now
the big one.
wandering. So
He's like, who do I attack first?
the heavy breathing is not Daniel. It is the heavy breathing is not Daniel. It is my chocolate lab. Yes, I know this is the downside of filming in my home, but what are you gonna do? All right. Well, we can wrap this up in a second, but I did jot down some ideas to help. One of the things I liked that they said in there was, how do you wake yourself up from the matrix when you don't even know you're in the matrix?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I just jotted down a few things, and okay, this is hilarious because Daniel hates dogs.
This is why. No boundaries.
Daniel hates dogs.
I don't hate dogs. I hate dogs that don't have boundaries.
Okay,
I love dogs that are well trained.
I like
They're
dogs.
outdoors
that respect my
that
privacy.
know their place. They know their
Yeah.
dogs.
Quit being a social media dog and get in my business.
Yeah, somebody lied to you and said that you were a human. You're able to go wherever you want to go.
Okay. We need to wrap this up. But okay, so ideas to help, and I'm gonna list off some of these. You guys can tell me what you think, if you would add to it or anything. All right. So one, I put like you got to set limits for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got to set like your own screen time limits, and some of this is just going to be pure discipline.
Yeah.
Or set up your phone. Like I could remotely control my kids' screen time, and
Yeah.
I set up time limits for all of them. Although that 7.5 hour one, I'm going to severely reduce that.
So before any more of these really practical ways to cut down, there is an option to get rid of your cell phone completely. Get rid of social media.
Oh, that's
completely.
on here. That's on here.
Okay, good. I was like, well, let's start with that.
That's on here.
If you're
All right.
willing and you're able to do that, it's going to be good. I promise.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if getting rid of your cell phone completely is truly that realistic, because you live in the world where you can get a hardline phone communication, but the people who have those are called Amish.
Yeah.
And so, I know other people do have them, but I think that might be harder for most people than.
Well, we just
Yeah.
got done talking for an hour about our world and what we think it's like.
Yeah. Well, hey.
It's the black and white coming out in him.
It
Yeah,
is.
there he goes.
It is.
Daniel's like, here's a solution. End it all. EMP takes everything out,
Yeah.
and that's just the way it's gonna. And like, we're gonna
No.
all live. We're gonna live on land and
Yeah.
old school buildings like he does.
Yeah.
But
Drastic
yeah,
change.
drastic change. Just get rid of it. Set time limits for yourself. Put the phone away before bed, and
that's good.
just kind of rest your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get rid of what is addictive.
Yeah.
So delete it. And, I wrote down, if you can't live without it, it's become an addiction.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you have a hard time getting rid of your Facebook account, it's become an addiction.
Yeah.
And you can say all day long, well, it's to stay connected. It's this, is that, is that. It's become an addiction.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
it's something you absolutely have to have in your life, it's an addiction. Same
Yeah.
goes for Twitter. Same goes for Snapchat. Same goes for Instagram.
Yeah.
Any of those types of things.
Yeah.
Find your 5 friends and work at cultivating those
Yeah.
relationships.
That's a good one.
Outside of a phone. That's where get rid
Yeah.
of the phone. Go out to eat with them more. Invite them over to your house more. Sit around a fire more.
Yeah.
Do those
Those are my
things where you
favorites.
Yeah.
purposefully are putting those people in your life.
Yeah.
And then do gatherings with your 15.
Yeah.
And say, we're just going to have a barbecue. Be more intentional about actually building relationships that aren't shallow online ones.
Yeah.
Love it.
Read a wide range of opinions, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree
So-
with that one.
So that's one thing that I do on my phone. I am a Christian. I am a conservative Christian. But when I read the news at night, I will read Fox News, but I will also read Huffington Post, and I will read MSNBC, CNN, and I'll read conservative points of view, and
Yeah.
I will read more liberal points of view. And there's actually this cool search engine now called Free Spoke, that's all about kind of free speech. It's like a Google search engine, but it's called Free Spoke. And they have a whole news section, and it's really cool because their news section will have one news story, but then it'll give you 3 or 4 articles from different places, and it'll say on the article conservative, liberal, neutral. Like it'll tell you the viewpoint
that's
you're
cool.
getting from that article, from those different sites. So that's kind of cool. So you can read through different opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen to a wide range of opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
I might be firm set on my beliefs as a Christian, but I love having conversations with people who don't think the way that I do. And I think that's part of the problem is we are just absolutely unwilling to have civil conversations today with anybody who doesn't think anything close or remotely like us. And we just write them off from the very beginning. And it's why you can't have someone sit down and say, well, I am very pro-choice, and another says I'm very pro-life.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I hate you and I hate you, and we're never going to agree. And maybe you won't agree, but you know what? Take some time to actually hear the other person's perspective, and you might learn something.
Right.
And so maybe it doesn't change your mind, but maybe you actually get a friend out of it.
Yeah.
And you learn, hey, the people who think on the other side of me aren't as evil as I think they are, and they're just common, normal people like anybody else. We just have different opinions.
Yeah.
And then severely reduce your friend list.
Yeah.
I put that on there.
Yeah.
Like, what is your goal? Like, I get it
if
if it's your business,
Yeah.
if you're trying to make money, whatever. But man, reduce your friend list. If we can only really have 150, who's your 150?
Yeah.
Find that out. Silence your phone. It's like turn off notifications, because I think that's the biggest trigger for us at work. We're in meetings. We set the phone right next to us. And even if it's flipped upside down, we can't see the screen. What are we doing? We're like listening for the buzz. And we become like Pavlov's dog, where it's like, he hears the dog hears the ding, and then he automatically starts salivating because he knows he's getting a treat.
Yeah.
And that's what we do with our phones.
Yep.
Well, now with the watches, I mean,
Yeah.
it's right there. You're just like, boom.
Yep.
That's why I do have all my like social media, all that stuff, except for my messengers because I use it so much for work.
Yeah.
But all of that
Notifications.
doesn't go off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that At Your Best, he talks about that. When you're trying to work within your green zone and being the most productive, the most efficient, then silence everything else in your life.
Yeah.
So that you can only focus on what you need to. But I think all of us could do a little bit better at that, where we are silencing notifications and that type of stuff. I would do that with Facebook, and I would do that with email, so that I wouldn't even know I was getting anything until I opened my phone.
Yeah.
and then
you wanted to check it.
and I wanted to check it.
Yeah.
Like I tried to control it rather than letting it control me in that regard.
Yeah.
Pay attention to your kids' usage. I think we've become a generation of parents that we are letting iPads raise our children.
Yeah.
And we're letting phones raise our children. And we're just assuming that they're not looking at anything bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't assume that ever.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
It's
like-
gonna happen sooner or later.
Yeah. Truman gets mad at me whenever I'm like, you don't need your iPad.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine. Go do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. If you see it's an addiction already for your kids, intervene.
Yeah.
Like if they're that upset about it, it's an addiction.
Right.
It's like, don't let them be addicted to it.
Yep. So our kids are not allowed to have social media, period.
Yeah.
And I have caught a couple of our kids who decided to open a social media account anyways. And of course, I get notifications on my phone about how they're using their phone. You can call me a terrible parent or just a helicopter parent all day long, but I'm going to do everything I can in the 18 years that they're living in my home to protect their brains and
Yes.
protect their minds from this stuff that's happening to these kids.
Yeah.
And so for us, there is no social media usage until you're probably 17, 18 years old. You can about leave the home or whatever.
Yeah.
Traditionally, that's been the case. Definitely no TikTok.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And that's one of the things I hate is, that whole algorithm thing. Somebody at church said, oh, you got to start a TikTok. I was like, I really don't want TikTok. It's just so stupid.
Yeah.
And, but they were like, oh yeah, but you might want to think about doing it. Maybe it'd be cool in the church for a staff TikTok. So I opened an account just to mess around with it. And, you put your name, your age, that kind of stuff in there. And immediately I'm getting half naked women.
Yeah.
Yep.
42-year-old male.
Yep.
It's like, here's
42-year-old
what they
male.
think
Here it
that's
is.
what
Like
they
here,
wanna
like
look at.
you automatically want to look at softcore porn. Like,
Yeah.
and here it is, video
Yeah.
after video after video.
Yeah.
And I went back and I told this person, I was like, this is what I was getting. Like right away, I'm getting women who were just
Yeah.
showing me their boobs and stuff. And
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, well, you have to like start searching for things. And then the algorithm changes.
Right.
And I was like, but that's not what they want. They want me locked in on sex. That's
Yes.
what they really want.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I was like, no, it lasted about 10 minutes and I
Yeah.
deleted that account.
It's
The
like, no,
end.
you have to change this and this and this in your life, and you have to do all these things to use this product. And we're all like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll do it. Like,
No,
that's sad.
because that's a whole nother topic of how I've already gone down the road of addiction and pornography, and
Yeah.
I already know what that's going to do to people when they get locked into that
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, pay attention to your kids' usage. Talk to your kids about social media. Have you ever had a conversation to your kids about both the benefits and the danger of social media?
Yeah.
Have you ever asked your kids how they feel when somebody unfriends them?
Yeah.
Have you ever asked them if they've been bullied in any way over Snapchat or whatever? Have you ever talked to them? Do you ever get down? Do you ever get depressed whenever somebody dislikes your post or somebody
that's good.
gives negative comments? Like, you need to talk about what your kids are experiencing, what your
Yeah.
kids are feeling, because if you are not involved in this, again, listen to the percentages of girls, and
Yeah.
they didn't have the guys, but I'm sure it's just as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Percentage of girls who are cutting themselves and who are killing themselves, because now you have a generation of strangers who are hiding behind keyboards,
Yeah.
beating the crap out of your kid.
Yeah.
And it is destroying this generation.
Yeah.
And so it is on us as parents. So
Yep.
we can blame these tech companies all we want, but we're allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in our power to stop it.
It is.
And it's definitely our responsibility as parents
Yes.
to control what our kids can do
Yep.
in that regard. And then become friends with people who don't think like you.
Yeah.
I put that one too. Friend people who don't think like you. And so, like this at the end of the day, it's all technology, and it can be a powerful tool that connects people. But I think for us as the church, and we're pretty much out of time for today. But one thing I was going to say for us as a church that, because I think the
Yeah.
church is going down the same rabbit hole.
Yep.
And where the church is becoming less about what we're actually in existence for, which is to know God, love God, and to love people.
Yeah.
And I think we are turning people into the product.
Yep.
Just as Facebook turns us into products,
Yeah.
we're saying, hey, this really works. Now let's do this in the church world, because if you even look at our denominational statistics, they want to know what your online attendance, what your engagement's like, how many likes on your live feeds are you getting, and comments are you getting, and
Goodness.
all this kind of stuff. And it's like, we're doing the exact same thing in the church.
Yeah.
It's not really about that person. It's not really about the heart of the person. It is about, are we getting eyes on the screen?
Yeah.
Are we drawing people to hear? And I think sometimes we mask it with, we just want to see people come to know Jesus and the gospel. But I think at the end of the day, because we're human beings like anybody else, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about ego, man.
Yeah.
It is about, look at us.
Yeah.
Look how big we are.
How many likes we have.
Yeah.
and-
How many likes we have,
many
how many followers we
followers.
have, all this kind of stuff. And now we got some places doing online church only.
Yeah.
And they've got online only pastors.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you build a real relationship that way?
Yeah.
Through a live chat during a service, Again, those can be tools, because they are giving the church the opportunity to share the gospel in a greater way than you could.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're hitting a lot of eyes at once. But you're also, man, you got to be careful to stop turning people into a product.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have to be really mindful of that as well.
Yep.
Any other final thoughts for you guys? We'll wrap this up for today. I've really enjoyed
I
this
think
conversation.
you've nailed a lot of them.
Yeah. I think it was a really good conversation.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for us today. Thank you guys for listening and watching and emailing and rating and reviewing and all the other ings that you can do to stay connected with us. We are enjoying doing this with you guys. We hope you're enjoying listening to it or watching
Yeah.
it online. I did start a YouTube channel just for the Q that you can try to find. YouTube probably won't let you find it now because they'll hear all
'Cause we
this
talk negatively
talk about
about all of
social
it.
media.
Facebook.
But
won't
it's
let
there
you.
until the man takes it down. But until next week, God bless everybody.
Bye.
Bye.